Welcome back, everybody. This Week in America. Thank you for joining us on the program. Website thisweekinamerica.us. As mentioned, our guest on the program, Dr. Teja Jaensch. He's a Kung Fu master and Chinese medicine physician. He holds degrees in Chinese medicine and international studies. He was on the Dean's Merit List and won prizes for academic achievement. He runs a busy clinic with his wife, is the head coach at the Kung Fu Academy in the Hills District of Sydney, Australia, and working on his master's in Chinese medicine. He's the author of the book we'll be talking about on today's program, The Ledger of Good and Evil, A Manual for Humanity. The book offers a ray of hope and light in these times of pain, guilt, and animosity with a strong message of eliminating negativity by starting with one's own self. Teja, welcome to the program. Great to have you with us on This Week in America.
Thanks for having me, Rick. It's a great pleasure.
It is a fascinating book called The Ledger of Good and Evil, A Manual for Humanity. This goes back to ancient Chinese teachings. Talk a little bit about the Ledger of Good and Evil, where the name comes from, and then we'll talk about the fact that I mentioned this was ancient Chinese teachings. It seems to be just as important today as it was back then.
Yeah, I'd agree with all of that. And the Ledger of Good and Evil is a translation of a story that myself and a doctor in America, Dr. Yaron Seidman, we translated that book from ancient Chinese into English. And we came across this book in a travel to China we did back a few years ago, and we came across a philosophical family in the Sichuan province of China called the Liu family. And one of their forebears, a gentleman called Liu Yuan, had actually taken this story. So this is a story where they don't know who the original author is. It comes from way back in time, and it's one of these cultural parables, as it was, that has been sort of handed down. Now, what Liu Yuan did in the Qing dynasty is he took this story and he edited it, and he took out some of the what he would call distracting factors of the book, so the people of his time and his age would hopefully be able to hear the message clearly or see the principle clearly in the book. Now, what I've done now is with this translation is I've done the same. This book is my abridged version of that story, and I've tried to hopefully take away some of the things that might distract us, which were culturally relevant back in the Qing dynasty China several hundred years ago, which may not be so culturally relevant to us today. But in spite of that, there's a principle that runs through this story that, it's made me reflect a lot. And why I've called it a manual for humanity is that I can see that the issues we're dealing with now in humanity and our personal lives, family lives, social lives, work lives, these are all issues that are constant issues for humanity. It's not just now because of our modernity and our technology we have these problems. It's been something that has permeated humanity since the beginning, and it basically comes down to an issue of relationships. So the Ledger of Good and Evil, in the classical Chinese, it was called the Ledger of Merit and Demerit. So they didn't actually use the words good and evil. It was merit and demerit. But merit and demerit is a little bit clunky in English. And basically the idea is there's a black and white. There's a yes and a no. There is a right and a wrong.
That breaks it down so we can understand it. The book is called The Ledger of Good and Evil. Dr. Teja Jaensch, our guest on the program. His website is ledgerofgoodandevil.com. Book information available there. Book, of course, available at Amazon. You can link on to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and get all the information, get directly to the doctor's website. One of the things you talk about is, as humans, we're at odds with our humanity, that we have a tendency to focus on negativity. And you talk about that right at the beginning of the book. Focus on that, because as I'm reading that, I'm thinking, yeah, that probably sums most of us up, in a sentence.
Listen, I'm going to go through my day today, and a whole heap of wonderful things happen to my day. Lots of great things. The weather's nice. I've had a nice meal. I've had all these good interactions. But then on the way home, I stop in at the fuel station, and the person behind the fuel tank there, he's really rude to me. I go away after that, even though everything in my day has been fantastic, this one thing that was not so good, gosh, it's playing in the back of my mind all the time. And this tends to happen is that when negative things happen, or things that don't go quite our way, we tend to focus on that, and then we forget all of the other things. What about all of the other good things? And interesting. There's some interesting TED Talks on this about how neuroscience shows that our brain tends to filter out, and we sort of miss out some of the good things, and we just cling on to these more negative things. And this story that basically it starts with a beggar in China, and he's trying to find a better way in the world and figure out a way to improve his position in the world. And he devises a method, a really simple method, using yellow beans and black beans. Hence the cover of the book has the yellow and the black on it. Hence the title, A Good and an Evil, these choices that we have to make. And that's a choice of ours to choose to focus on negativity or not, or choose to focus on more the positive things. I'll give you an example of a patient of mine, a high-powered lawyer in the city. She read the book, and the next day she said, I go to the park every day and eat my lunch, and I see trash all over the ground. I know it's not right, but I never really did anything about it. But then when I read the book and I saw this example that was provided in the book, the next day I went there, I was down on my knees, hands and knees, and I picked up all this trash and put it away, and for me, then I have an image. I think, imagine me walking past and seeing this lawyer on the ground picking up other people's trash. I think, wow, look, this person's doing that. This has a resonance, and then this impacts myself. Or rather, I have a choice to let that impact me or not.
Well, and you say in the book, and the book is called The Ledger of Good and Evil, that with all of this negativity, it eventually changes who we are. It changes our character. It's not like, okay, I'm upset today with the problem I had with a vendor, on the way home, and tomorrow I start with a clean slate. We have a tendency to carry that over, and then it's a cumulative effect. So you're saying it does change our character after a while. We become much more negative and probably cynical because of this.
That's right, and it changes our characteristics.
Yes.
So one could argue that our character is something that is constant. And this is an argument from ancient China that says, you were born with what you just said, you were born with a clean slate. And then what happens is over time, let's just say if I've had a rough childhood or whatever's happened, the person I am today then becomes a reflection of that circumstance. So I could say, well, yeah, I'm inappropriate today, but that's because of A, B, and C, and D that happened to me when I was younger, or what have you. And then, so I say in the book, we become defined by our circumstances. Because my circumstances were thus, therefore I am justified in being like this. From my perspective and my studies into the issue, that's not quite right. What happens is that's our characteristics, yet it has taken us away from our character, which is really to try and do good, to try and be a good person, to try and be helpful, to try and be kind. These things are to try and basically be proper. So proper relationships. These are what is at the heart of the human being. And when we're doing that, suddenly things are different. Not only just in our thought concepts, but in Chinese medicine, your thoughts and emotions and your physical body, it's like this. In biomedicine, in Western medicine, Western science, we've signed it since Descartes said, I think, therefore I am, we've separated those two things out. I think, and this is my body. But in Chinese culture, Chinese medicine, and I think actually it makes a lot of sense to me personally, is that it's like this. So the work we're doing in our cultivation, as it were, or reflection and observation, it has a direct effect on our body. So a lot of patients are coming to me saying, I have this, I have this, I have this disease, and they're looking for the next pill or the next drug, or in my context, the next acupuncture point or herb, the next person who's going to fix the problem. And that's part of the answer. Yes, medicine is needed, but also, if we're not looking at the heart of the issue, which I think a lot of the time is, it starts with an inappropriate relationship. Okay, how did the obesity and diabetes come about? How did the cardiovascular disease come about? It came about maybe through an inappropriate relationship with exercise, with food, with sleep, with stress. All of these things were precursors to the disease that started, and that needs medicine now, whichever format it comes in. If we can, before that stage, start to improve those relationships with those things, and also with our family, etc., then later on we've prevented some of these occurrences happening. And this I think is the idea of preventive medicine. It starts actually from inside the person.
The book is called The Ledger of Good and Evil. The website is ledgerofgoodandevil.com. Dr. Teja Jaensch is our guest on This Week in America. Our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and you can log on and link on directly to the doctor's website to get information on the book. It is very easy to read. The first chapter reveals a method for cultivation. Second chapter, 100 diseases and 100 medicines, and I'll talk about that in a second. In the first chapter, method for cultivation, what exactly are you talking about with cultivation? How does that work?
Well, cultivation, you could call it many different things. In the area I work in, Sydney here in Australia, it's a very diverse community. So I can use the word cultivation pretty safely. Why do I say that? Because if someone from this religious background comes in and I say the one word meditation, they might react to that. Or another person comes in and I say the word prayer, they might react to that. So I need to try and find a way of engaging with people so they don't react with their bias and say, well, no, I don't like that, or that's not for me. Actually, it is for us because we're all human beings. We've got this thing that links us all, yet we're very attached to the idea of separating us. You are black, I am white. You are this religion, I am that religion. We are different. And that's true in one sense. We have this individuality, but there is something else behind it too. There is something that links us all, which is what I'm trying to get to with this idea of cultivation. And firstly, it starts with observation. Can I actually observe? And you'll see as you go through the first chapter of the book, the first step for this beggar who's going through China trying to improve his ways, he starts to notice with his yellow beans and black beans, when he starts to actually observe that and give himself yellow or black beans, for his actions and inactions. He's like, wow, I didn't realize when I was walking through the field, I kept knocking off the fruit with my hat. Before I didn't realize, now I realize. And so he would then adjust his actions to make himself more appropriate. So therefore, he observed first, and then he was able to cultivate or choose a proper action instead of an improper action. And this is essentially at the heart of the book, this idea of being able to observe and not just be blindly going on saying and doing all these things that may be, not proper, and instead observe them and try and be able to do them properly, and then notice the benefit, for yourself and for your immediate family and friends.
As you encourage the reader to basically at several points put the book down and become a participant. And
yes.
When you think about that, it's like, I can read all of this and understand all of this. If I don't implement it, I'm not going to be making a whole lot of progress. So being a participant with the information you're passing along is really crucial, isn't it?
It is. And just actually this morning I've been working on an app for the book. So in the book, it says go get some yellow beans and black beans. So you can actually do this. Make not this just a philosophical exercise, make it a practical exercise that translates into reality. But now we've made an app, so you can download the app and you can do the actual exercise with the story as it goes along on your phone. You don't actually have to have the beans, but you can as well. Without actively participating in the process, then it's just it's just a mental exercise, which is fine. That's why I wrote it as a story. It's not a lecture, it's a story. And what I like about storytelling is you can tell someone a story and they pick up their own thing from it. You read a story and you pick up what you need at that time from it. It's not like it's not a sermon. It's an opportunity to read it, and then you take from it if you can. And if it's not for you, it's not for you. But if it is, then there are various ways of following this and working with this.
I guarantee you,
if I do that, if you look at the cover of the book, it has these two yellow circles on the corner there, and it's like there is a black page, yet there's this yellow light moving out. And we think in media all the time we hear about this disease or this disease, and now very popular measles is spreading. We hear about all diseases that spread, but there is something else that can spread throughout the society, and that's that's goodness spreading out, and peace, and not reacting, and more responsive people. That has an impact on the other people we engage with. So the person I met at the gas station now, he's working on himself. He's not being rude and angry to me. Then I walk away from that. I haven't had that bad interaction. So therefore, there's a ripple-on effect of this. which, hopefully will come with this book.
Well, in the analogy you use, and it really makes a lot of sense, is like a stone falling into a pond. And with all of our actions are basically a stone falling into a pond, aren't they?
Yeah, and we're that stone, and we think, well, here I am landing in the middle. But when we understand, and especially from modern medicine, that our actions have ripple impacts outwards, not just right now, but in time. And so we're currently looking in a lot, very interesting, into epigenetics. So epigenetics is not just your genes, but how your genes are expressed. And we're seeing that grandchildren are very, very strongly affected by and linked to their grandparents. So, for example, there are certain studies that showing the stress or the trauma that grandparents went through, if they went through that, it's most likely going to translate into some sort of anxiety or depression tendencies in the grandchildren. Now, this has never been understood before, and we think back on our own grandparents and what perhaps they lived through war, through depression and what have you. And then we think of now the current sort of crisis of mental health in society. So what does that mean then for myself? So I'm a father, and one day maybe a grandfather. So my choices I make for myself, who I am, what I choose, not even just with food and fluids, etc., but with my actions and choices and how I react, this isn't just affecting me. So in the book we talk about it affecting your own health. It actually, there is permeations further on. So if I know that my actions now are going to affect my grandchildren, like what do I want my grandchildren to have the best possible. We all do.
Yes.
But if we understand that my choice with smoking or alcohol or being abusive or inappropriate, if I understand that that actually has a direct physiological effect on my grandchildren, man, that changes things. It's my responsibility is not just me anymore. My responsibility is, wow, who I am. This is actually really important for for my offspring. So then, just personally, that resonates very strongly.
Teja Jaensch is our guest on This Week in America. The book is called The Ledger of Good and Evil, A Manual for Humanity. Dr. Jaensch's website is ledgerofgoodandevil.com. You can log on and link up directly by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. A few minutes left in the program. I mentioned the second chapter, 100 Diseases and 100 Medicines. And again, this is just not something you want people to read, put the book away, and go on. You want them to actually understand, go back and read, and implement what you're talking about here. Basically, what are the concepts with 100 Diseases and 100 Medicines? I'm looking at these, and they all make perfect sense. And basically, if we follow these, we're going to be a better person. The world's going to be a better place.
Yeah, and it translates, why it's talking about medicine, disease, it translates directly into one's health physiologically. So if one's complaining or worried about physiological health problems and disease, the answer is not only just seeking medications and drugs. Yes, they're necessary, but there's also another part to it. And what the idea is, you read through these medicines and diseases, and one critique I had was it says such and such and such, this is one disease. And the person, and then this repeats 100 times, and they said, listen, I want to read through this quickly. Why do you keep repeating, this is one disease, this is one disease? Why don't you just list it there in bullet point form so I can just scan it nice and quick? Again, this is not the idea. The idea is to stop, take a breather, slow down, and just have a read through slowly and contemplate. And some of these things for myself, even though I've been working with this method for years now, I still read back through those medicines and diseases and go, wow, I've got a lot of work to do. And the gentleman, a doctor in China we visited, he's been doing this all his life, 84 years old. And he tells me that still each night he reads through those lists and still he's got work to do, he says. Yet, from my perspective, I look at him and he's just, such an open and kind, generous man. But when he looks on himself, he's still, with kindness, he still has work to do. So one reads through these medicines and diseases and sees, if this is something that relates to us and how can we try and improve on those facets. But again, what's really important is it's not a critique. It's not something where I'm bad, I'm not good enough. Rather, it is we're observing and going, wow, we can still improve more. That's good. That's exciting. I've still got work to do. I think we're our own worst enemy in that we beat ourselves up a lot. And that is not the idea with this book. It's actually the opposite, to be able to say, wow, I can do better. And that's an encouraging, positive message.
And you are very realistic, and you've gone through all of this journey you're taking us on. You're on that same journey. You've been there like we going through these. And you talk about the yellow and the black beans. You said when you began the journey, your past came back to haunt you. We've got about a minute left in the program. Talk about dealing with that, because if you had issues in dealing with it, I'm sure we all are going to have some issues as we start dealing with this. How did you get through that?
That was tough, and because, I'd think now I'm going to start on this method of trying to be a better person and try and be, responsible, but this wasn't always the case, and whilst I wouldn't classify myself as a bad person, there's things in the past I could have done better, much better, and but I can't go back in the past there and start allocating myself black beans for that. Remember our focus on negativity we had before?
Yes.
There are also a lot of things in the past I did pretty good. I've helped a lot of people in my clinic. Lots of things I have actually done good, but they don't stick in my mind. Like in my clinical practice, all the successes and the people I've helped don't stick in my mind. It's the people the cases that I haven't really been able to do the best with. They're always in my mind, making me work further and forwards. But in the end of the book, I say, the idea is that we do this ledger, we do our yellow and black beans, we observe ourselves, but then in the end, let's just say I've got a whole heap of black beans and I grind them up, I make a strong cup of coffee and I drink that down, no problem, and I get on. So we start again. In the book, he goes for 100 days, he selects his yellow and black beans, and after that he looks and says, wow, I've got so many black beans. And he starts again, and he does another 100 days. And then he looks, wow, there's a few more yellow beans, that's great. And he starts again, and he keeps doing this process until there's only yellow beans. Meaning he's not just collecting more and more black beans as he goes.
It is an enlightening book. It's called The Ledger of Good and Evil, A Manual for Humanity. The author is Dr. Teja Jaensch. She's been our guest on This Week in America. The website is ledgerofgoodandevil.com. Of course, you can go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and link on directly to Dr. Jaensch's website. Doctor, a fascinating book. Great to have you with us on the program. Hopefully we can do it again. Thank you so much for being with us on the program today. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. It's been great. I appreciate it.
It's been our pleasure. You're listening to This Week in America. Our website, thisweekinamerica.us.